Hello everyone! Do you dare to uncover the terrifying truth lurking in the shadows of Los Angeles, where a single Uber driver unwittingly opened the door to a relentless nightmare, a mysterious passenger, bloodthirsty creatures, and a city crumbling in sheer horror? This chilling secret is blowing up social media, and if you don't watch now, you'll miss the most spine-tingling story that's got the world holding its breath. Subscribe to the channel and drop a comment to dive into this horrifying truth with us. The dashboard clock glowed 1:45 a.m., casting a sickly green light across the worn interior of my Honda Civic. I was rolling through Culver City, where LA's glossy veneer of artisanal coffee shops and overpriced juice bars clashed with the grit of check-cashing joints and neon-lit taco trucks. 6 months into driving for Uber, I'd seen enough to fill a Reddit thread. Wasted influencers snapping selfies while spilling kombucha on my seats, finance bros yelling about Bitcoin pumps, and that one guy who swore he was this close to selling his zombie apocalypse script to Netflix. But tonight, the city felt off, like it was holding its breath before a storm nobody saw coming. I'd just dropped off a passenger, a tech dude in a Patagonia vest, who tipped me $1 despite his AirPods Max, screaming, "I'm loaded." My plan was to call it quits, maybe swing by the 24-hour Carnitas El Rey for a burrito and crash in my shoebox apartment in Mar Vista. Rent wasn't going to pay itself, but I was beat, and the idea of dealing with one more drunk passenger made me want to yeet my phone into the Pacific. Then ping! A new ride request popped up on the app. Palms a few blocks away. No destination listed, which raised an eyebrow, but the payout looked decent, and my gas tank wasn't exactly overflowing with optimism. I tapped accept and pointed my Civic toward the pickup spot. Palms was classic LA, a patchwork of faded stucco apartment complexes from the 40s, built for GIs and now milking tenants for $2,500 a month for a one-bedroom with paper-thin walls. The streets were lined with sagging palm trees and streetlights that bathed everything in an orange haze, like the whole neighborhood was auditioning for a post-apocalyptic flick. I was halfway there when a pack of cop cars screamed through an intersection, lights flashing like a Skrillex concert, blowing past a red light at what had to be 90 miles an hour. I slammed on the brakes, my heart doing a quick tick-tock dance in my chest. "Whoa, chill," I muttered, gripping the wheel like it was my last lifeline. Before I could process it, an ambulance wailed by, then another, their sirens fading into the night like a horror movie soundtrack. I leaned forward, squinting at the sky. Sure enough, the thwap, thwap, thwap of a helicopter cut through the air, its spotlight slicing across the rooftops. Then another chopper and another. LA's no stranger to chaos. Sirens are basically white noise here. But this was next level. It wasn't just a random police chase or a gang bust. This felt like the city was gearing up for something big, something nobody was talking about. I turned down my lo-fi beats playlist, the one I kept on to soothe the late-night crowd, and listened. The sirens were everywhere, layered over each other, a distant wail that made my skin prickle. My gut was doing that thing it does when you know you've messed up, like forgetting to Venmo your roommate for utilities or leaving your laptop at a coffee shop. I shook it off, telling myself it was just another wild night in LA. Maybe a celebrity had a meltdown or some TikToker started a riot for clout. Wouldn't be the first time. I pulled onto the pickup street in Palms, a narrow, dimly lit stretch flanked by a hulking apartment complex that looked like it hadn't been renovated since Truman was president. The place screamed slumlord special, peeling paint, cracked windows, and a vibe that said you'd find roaches bigger than your thumb in the kitchen. I parked at the curb, engine idling, and checked the app. The passenger's name was Eric, no profile pic, just the default grey silhouette. Typical for a 2 a.m. rider. I rolled down my window, hoping for a breeze to cut through the stale air in my car, but the night was heavy, almost suffocating. That's when I noticed the silence. Not the cozy suburban kind with crickets and sprinklers. This was a dead, eerie quiet, broken only by the faint hum of sirens and the occasional chopper buzzing overhead like a swarm of angry wasps. It was the kind of silence that makes your brain scream, "Something's wrong." I shifted in my seat, checking my mirrors like I was in a fast and furious chase scene. Nothing, just the dark, looming shape of the apartment complex and a streetlight flickering like it was about to clock out for good. I glanced at my phone. Eric was moving slower than a DMV line on a Monday. "Come on, dude," I muttered, tapping the steering wheel to the ghost of my playlist. I was about to ping him when movement caught my eye a block ahead. 3 figures bolted across the street, their silhouettes sharp against the orange glow of the streetlights. They weren't out for a midnight jog. These people were sprinting, full-on panic mode, like they were running from a slasher flick villain. One of them, a guy in a hoodie, stumbled, nearly eating asphalt before recovering and vanishing around a corner. A woman with him glanced back, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. Then a shout, sharp, frantic, but too far to make out the words, echoed through the night. They were gone in seconds, swallowed by the shadows. The street went still again, but my heart was hammering like I'd just chugged a Red Bull. "What the actual hell?" I said to the empty car, my voice too loud in the silence. I checked my mirrors again, half expecting to see Pennywise waving from the storm drain. Nothing. Just the empty street and that damn flickering streetlight. I was 2 seconds from cancelling the ride and peeling out when the back door of my Civic flew open with a bang that made me jump so hard I nearly headbutted the sun visor. "Are you Wes?" a voice barked, raw and out of breath, like the guy had just run from a bear. I whipped around, my pulse spiking. "Yeah, I'm Wes," I said, trying to play it cool despite my heart doing a full-on EDM drop. The guy, Eric, I hoped, threw himself into the back seat and slammed the door so hard I swear the window rattled. He was a mess, sweat-soaked, hair plastered to his forehead, and clutching a wadded-up T-shirt against his neck. Even in the dim light, I could see the dark stains spreading across the fabric. Blood. Way too much blood. "Take me to the nearest hospital," he said, his voice tight, like he was biting back a scream. Then he did something that sent a chill down my spine. He reached over and hit the lock button on the door. Click. The sound was sharp, like a guillotine dropping. I stared at him in the rearview mirror, my brain scrambling to catch up. "Dude, you look rough," I said, captain of the obvious. His face was pale, almost ghostly, and his eyes were wild, darting toward the dark windows of the apartment complex like he expected a monster to come crashing through. "No shit," he snapped, his voice cracking. "That's why I need a hospital. Go!" I hesitated, my hand frozen on the gear shift. "Man, maybe we should call an ambulance." "No!" He cut me off, his tone sharp enough to slice through my hesitation. "I can't afford an ambulance. Just drive, okay? Hurry! I'm bleeding here." I got a better look at him in the mirror. He was in his late 20s maybe, wiry, with a faded Radiohead tee and jeans that looked like they'd been through a war. His breathing was ragged, each inhale sounding like it was scraping his lungs raw. But it was his eyes that got me. They weren't just scared. They were haunted, like he'd seen something that had rewired his soul. Okay, I said, fumbling with my phone to pull up the nearest hospital. 7 minutes away, less if I jumped on the 10 freeway for a quick stretch. I hit the gas, and the Civic lurched forward, tires squealing just enough to make me feel like I was in a low-rent action flick. Eric stayed glued to the window, his head craned back toward the apartment complex, watching it fade into the distance like it might sprout tentacles and chase us. The streets were empty, the orange streetlights washing over us as we sped through palms. The sirens were still out there, a constant drone, and every few seconds I'd catch the flicker of a chopper's spotlight sweeping the rooftops. My phone buzzed, a text from my cousin, probably drunk ranting about his latest Christmas rom-com script getting butchered on set in Canada. I ignored it. Right now, I had a bleeding guy in my back seat and a growing sense that I'd just stepped into some Stranger Things bullshit. I glanced at Eric again. He was still clutching that bloody t-shirt, his knuckles white, his face glistening with sweat. He looked like he was one bad turn away from passing out, but his eyes kept flicking to the side mirrors like he was waiting for something to come screaming out of the dark. "Dude, you good?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer. His head was still turned, staring out the back window like he could see something I couldn't. Finally he spoke, his voice low and strained, like every word was a fight. "Someone attacked me." My stomach did a little somersault. "Attacked you? Like what? A robbery?" He shook his head, wincing as the movement tugged at his neck. "No, my neighbor. I woke up because I heard something in my apartment. Got up and there he was, standing in my living room. Buck, naked." I nearly swerved into a parked car. "Naked? You're kidding." He didn't laugh. His face stayed grim, his hand pressing harder against the t-shirt. "Yeah, bleeding too. I knew this guy was weird, always muttering, staring through his blinds. But he kept to himself, so I didn't care. Until tonight. Tonight he broke in and started, I don't know, vibing like a damn performance artist." I let out a nervous chuckle. "Because what else do you do?" "So what? He just strolled in and started channeling his inner Burning Man." Eric's eyes flicked to the mirror, meeting mine for the first time. "He was talking crazy, jabbering nonsense. Before I could do anything, he jumped me, and then he trailed off, his voice catching. "He what?" I pressed, my eyes bouncing between the road and the mirror. "He bit me," he said, barely audible. "Right here." He tilted his head slightly and I caught a glimpse of the wound, jagged, raw, like something had taken a bite out of him. "Bit you?" I repeated, my brain short-circuiting. "Like what, a pit bull?" "Worse," he said, his voice trembling. Then he ran off, just bolted, still bleeding, still naked. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, trying to stitch together a story that made sense. Maybe the guy was tweaking. LA's got no shortage of meth heads. Or maybe it was some psychotic episode. But the way Eric said it, the way his eyes kept scanning the mirrors, made it feel like there was more to it. Something darker. We hit a red light, and the silence in the car was suffocating. The intersection was empty, not a soul in sight, which was weird for LA even at this hour. Above us, a chopper banked low, its spotlight sweeping over the rooftops like it was hunting for something. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. "You call the cops?" I asked, trying to break the tension. Eric shook his head. "No time, I just grabbed my phone and booked you. I didn't know what else to do." I nodded, not sure if I bought it. Something about this whole thing was screaming run. I glanced at my phone. 5 minutes to the hospital. I could do this. Drop him off, let the doctors deal with it and get the hell out. Maybe I'd even take a week off, binge The Witcher, and pretend this night never happened. But then I saw it. Up ahead, perched on the curved neck of a streetlight, was something. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a tarp, maybe, or a trash bag caught in the wind. But then it moved and my blood turned to ice. It was a person, or something shaped like one, crouched impossibly on the narrow pole, 30 feet up. The orange light caught it, and I could make out a head, arms, and holy shit, eyes. 2 glowing pinpricks like a coyote's eyes catching headlights, staring right at us. "What the hell?" I whispered, my voice barely a breath. Eric shifted in the back, his breathing hitching. "What? What do you see?" I couldn't answer. My eyes were glued to the figure. It was too far to make out details, but the way it sat there, perfectly balanced, made my skin crawl. No one could climb a streetlight like that. My brain scrambled for answers, a prank, a stunt, maybe some TikTok idiot chasing views, but none of it fit. Those eyes weren't human. "Go!" Eric shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "Go now! Go!" I slammed my foot on the gas, the Civic surging forward as the light turned green. The figure didn't move, but I could feel its eyes on us, tracking us as we sped away. I checked my rearview mirror, hoping to catch another glimpse, but a mess of jacaranda branches blocked my view. "What was that?" I asked, my voice shaking. Eric didn't answer. He was curled up in the back seat, trembling, his breathing like a broken engine. I glanced at him in the mirror, and my stomach dropped. His face was paler now, lips tinged blue, like he was running out of time. The bloody T-shirt was slipping, and I could see the wound, ugly, torn, and way worse than I'd thought. "Hang on, man," I said, my voice tight. "We're almost there." But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about a hospital run. The sirens, the choppers, the runners, the thing on the streetlight. This wasn't just a bad night. This was something else, something that was about to swallow me whole. The Civic's engine roared as I floored it, tearing away from that nightmare perched on the streetlight. My heart was still hammering, each beat screaming, "What the fuck was that?" as I gripped the steering wheel like it was my only anchor to reality. The orange glow of palms flickered past, the empty streets blurring into a neon smear. Sirens wailed in the distance, a relentless chorus that felt like LA was unraveling at the seams. Above us, the choppers kept circling, their spotlights slashing through the night like they were hunting something straight out of a Cloverfield sequel. In the back seat, Eric was a mess, curled up like a wounded animal, his bloody T-shirt slipping from his neck. His breathing was all wrong, ragged, wet, like he was gargling gravel. I stole a glance in the rearview mirror, and my stomach did a backflip. His face was ghostly pale, sweat beading on his forehead, like he'd just run a 5K in a sauna. His eyes were half closed, but they kept darting to the side mirrors like he was expecting that thing from the streetlight to come sprinting after us. "Hey man, just hang in there," I said, my voice shakier than I'd like. "Hospital's 5 minutes out, you're going to be fine." I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, him or me. My phone's GPS was barking directions, guiding us toward the 10 freeway on-ramp, a quick hop to the hospital. I figured if I could just get him there, I'd be out of this horror movie and back to my regularly scheduled program of dodging LA traffic and praying for tips. Eric didn't respond. He just groaned, a low, guttural sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I risked another glance in the mirror. The bloody T-shirt had fallen lower, exposing the wound on his neck. It wasn't just a cut, it was a bite, jagged and raw, like something had tried to rip a chunk out of him. The skin around it was swollen, discolored, almost black, like it was infected with something straight out of a Cronenberg flick. I swallowed hard, trying to focus on the road. Just drive, Wes. Drop him off and bounce. We hit a stoplight and the world went quiet again, save for the distant wail of sirens and the thump of chopper blades. The intersection was deserted, not a single car or pedestrian, which was straight up apocalyptic for LA. I leaned forward, scanning the shadows. My brain was still replaying that thing on the streetlight, those glowing eyes, that impossible crouch. Was it a person? A stunt gone wrong? Some influencer pulling a prank for clout? My gut said no. Those eyes weren't human, they were hungry. I was about to run the red light, screw it, no cops were around, when a fire truck screamed through the intersection, its lights strobing like a rave from hell. I slammed on the brakes, my Civic lurching. Eric jolted in the back seat, letting out a pained whimper. "Sorry, man," I muttered, my eyes flicking to the mirror. He was slumped against the door now, his breathing shallower, the bloody t-shirt barely covering the wound. I wished I had a face mask. My last one had snapped its strap earlier that day, and after my last bout with COVID, I wasn't exactly eager to catch whatever plague this guy might be carrying. So, what happened back there? I asked, trying to fill the silence and keep my mind off the streetlight demon. You said your neighbor bit you, what's the deal with that? Eric's eyes flicked to the mirror, meeting mine for a split second before darting away. His voice was sluggish, like he was fighting to get the words out. I told you, I woke up, heard something, found him in my living room, naked, bleeding. He was talking crazy, jabbering, like he wasn't even human. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my eyes on the road as the light turned green. Crazy how? Like reciting the Matrix monologue or what? Eric didn't laugh. He winced, adjusting the t-shirt against his neck. No, like gibberish, words that didn't make sense. His eyes were wrong too, all bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in weeks. I tried to tell him to get out, but before I could, he just lunged, grabbed me, bit me. He shuddered, his voice dropping to a whisper. Then he ran off, out the door, into the night. I let out a low whistle, trying to play it cool even though my skin was crawling. So, what, your neighbor's out here auditioning for 28 days later? That's some next-level shit, man. He didn't respond, just stared out the window, his breathing getting worse. I took a turn, the freeway on-ramp looming ahead. The hospital was close now, maybe 4 minutes if I gunned it, but something about Eric's story was gnawing at me. A naked, bleeding guy breaking in and biting him? That wasn't just a bad trip or a mental breakdown, that was something else. And those people I'd seen sprinting across the street, the choppers, the sirens, it was all starting to feel like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. We hit the on-ramp, the Civic climbing the concrete curve to the 10 freeway. The city sprawled out below us, a sea of twinkling lights under a fat, yellow moon that looked like it was judging us. Eric was quiet now, his head lolling against the seat. I glanced at him in the mirror, and my heart skipped a beat. He was sitting up straighter, his eyes half open but different, glazed over, like he was staring through me, not at me. His breathing had slowed, each inhale sharp and deliberate, like he was sniffing the air. "You okay back there?" I asked, my voice tight. No response, just that creepy, rhythmic breathing. I gripped the wheel harder, merging onto the freeway. Traffic was light, thank God for small miracles, but the emptiness of the road only made the night feel heavier, like we were the last two people in a city that had already checked out. Then he spoke, and his voice was wrong, low, gravelly, like he'd gargled glass. "Oh, negative." I froze, my eyes flicking to the mirror. "What?" "You're O negative," he said, his lips curling into a faint, unsettling smile. "Universal donor." My blood ran cold. How the hell did he know that? I was O negative, had to get tested after a car accident a few years back. But I'd never told him. Hell, I hadn't told anyone in forever. It wasn't exactly the kind of fun fact you drop in casual conversation. What?" I stammered, my voice cracking like a teenager's. Eric's smile widened, and I swear I saw a glint of something sharp in his mouth, teeth that didn't look right. He murmured, his voice thick, almost hungry. "I've lost a lot of blood. Could use some O negative right about now." A chill shot down my spine, and I forced a laugh, trying to diffuse the tension. "Yo, dude, you sound like you're auditioning for Twilight. Chill out, we're almost at the hospital." But my hands were shaking on the wheel, and my brain was screaming, "Get out now." The freeway stretched ahead, a concrete ribbon under the moon. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, that I couldn't pull over here. No exits, no shoulders. Just me, Eric, and whatever the hell was happening in my backseat. He giggled, actually giggled, like a kid who'd just pulled a prank. The sound was so out of place it made my skin crawl. "I've got a hole in my neck," he said, his voice raspy, almost playful. "I can breathe right through it." He pulled the t-shirt away and I caught a glimpse in the mirror, a gaping, bloody mess where his neck should have been smooth. Air hissed through it, a sickening wheeze that sounded like a broken accordion. I swerved, nearly clipping a pickup truck in the next lane. "Jesus, man, keep that covered," I shouted, my voice way higher than I wanted. I corrected course, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack a rib. The hospital exit was coming up, just a couple of miles, but it felt like a lifetime away. Then Eric's mood shifted, like someone flipped a switch. He doubled over, clutching his stomach, letting out a tortured moan. "Oh God, what's happening to me?" he whimpered, his voice back to normal, or as normal as it could be for a guy bleeding out in my car. "It hurts. It burns. Hey, just stay calm," I said, my own panic bubbling up. "We're almost there. Keep pressure on it." I was babbling now, throwing out every first aid tip I'd ever half remembered from a high school health class. My eyes kept flicking to the mirror, watching him writhe, his knees thumping against the back of my seat like an annoying kid on a flight. Then, silence. Dead, terrifying silence. I glanced back and Eric was sitting bolt upright, still as a statue. His head was tilted slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. His breathing was gone, no wheeze, no hiss, just nothing. My mouth went dry. You good?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. No answer, just the hum of the Civic's engine and the distant wail of sirens. The freeway curved upward, climbing toward an overpass, the city lights sprawling below. I pushed the gas, passing a slow-moving Prius, my eyes glued to the road. The exit was close now, maybe a minute away. I could do this. Drop him off, wash my hands of this nightmare, and maybe take up a safer gig, like delivering Postmates or cat-sitting for influencers. Then he spoke again, and the words hit me like a punch to the gut. "I'm gonna kill you," he said, his voice low and grating, dripping with malice. "But you're not gonna die." My heart stopped. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. "Hey man, let's just take it easy," I stammered, trying to channel my inner action hero. "No problem here, okay? I'm gonna drink the life right out of you. Oh, negative," he said, and that fucking giggle was back, sharp and unhinged, like a hyena sizing up its prey. My skin crawled, my throat tightening. I forced myself to sit up straighter, cranking my face into what I hoped was a tough guy's scowl. "Look, buddy, I don't want trouble," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "I know Brazilian jiu-jitsu, all right? Learned it from an actual Brazilian. I'll turn you into a pretzel if I have to, so let's stay cool." I glanced in the mirror, and my words died in my throat. The back seat was empty. Eric was gone. I grabbed the mirror, tilting it frantically, thinking maybe he'd slumped onto the floor. Nothing. No body, no bloody t-shirt, just an empty seat. My heart jackhammered in my chest. What the fuck? And then I felt it, cold breath on my cheek, like a blast from an open freezer, reeking of something rotten, something ancient. My hands froze on the wheel, my body locking up as the air in the car turned to ice. A low, wheezing laugh filled my ear. And I knew without looking that Eric, or whatever he'd become, was right beside me. The cold breath on my cheek was like a knife, sharp and icy, cutting through the haze of panic that had already fogged my brain. That stench, rotten, ancient, like something dredged up from a forgotten corner of an LA alley, made my stomach lurch. My hands were stone blocks on the steering wheel, my eyes locked on the freeway stretching ahead, the concrete ribbon of the 10 glowing under the sickly yellow moon. Eric's wheezing laugh filled the car, low and guttural, like a predator toying with its prey. I didn't dare turn my head, but I could feel him, or whatever he'd become, right there, inches from my face, his presence a violation of every survival instinct, screaming in my skull. "Dude," I croaked, my voice barely audible over the roar of my own pulse. "Back the fuck off." It was a pathetic attempt at bravado, like I was some wannabe action hero in a straight-to-streaming flick. My heart was jackhammering, my knuckles white as I gripped the wheel, trying to keep the Civic from veering into the next lane. The hospital exit was close, maybe a minute away, but it might as well have been on Mars. Eric didn't move. I could hear him breathing, if you could call it that. A wet, rasping sound, like air leaking through a punctured tire. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, hoping to see an empty back seat, praying this was just some adrenaline-fueled hallucination. But the mirror showed nothing but darkness, the silhouette of my own terrified face, staring back. Where the hell was he? Had he been on the floor this whole time? Or, fuck, was he actually next to me? I inched my head to the right, slow as death, every muscle screaming at me to keep my eyes on the road. The freeway curved upward, climbing toward an overpass, the city lights sprawling below like a glittering trap. My peripheral vision caught a glimpse of him, and my heart stopped dead. Eric's face was right there, hovering just past my shoulder. But it wasn't Eric anymore. Not really. His skin was pale as a corpse, stretched tight over his cheekbones, his lips black and peeled back in a grin that was half snarl, half nightmare. His teeth, Jesus, his teeth were jagged, pointed, like someone had taken a file to them and turned his mouth into a shark's maw. But the worst part? His eyes. They were blood-red pools, no pupils, no irises, just swollen, murky orbs that seemed to pulse with something alive, something wrong. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. He was staring at me, those eyes locked on mine, and I swear he was smelling me, his nose twitching as he sucked in air through his nose and that gaping hole in his neck. The wound was a mess, chewed-up flesh, bloodied and pock-marked, like a wild animal had gone to town on it. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Drugs, psychosis, some rare-ass disease. But nothing fit. This wasn't human. This was something else, something that belonged in a Reddit thread titled, "What's the creepiest shit you've ever seen?" "Eric," I said, my voice shaking so bad it sounded like I was auditioning for a horror podcast. "Just chill, okay? We're almost at the hospital. You're going to be fine." He didn't answer. Instead, he lunged. It happened so fast, I barely had time to scream. His hands, clammy, impossibly strong, clawed at my shoulders, yanking me back against the seat. His face was in mine, those jagged teeth snapping inches from my throat, the stench of rot overwhelming. It was like being attacked by a rabid dog, all snarls and fury. I thrashed, letting go of the wheel to shove him off, my fists swinging wildly. "Get off me," I yelled, landing a punch on his chest that felt like hitting a slab of cold meat. It happened so fast I barely had time to scream. His hands, clammy, impossibly strong, clawed at my shoulders, yanking me back against the seat. His face was in mine, those jagged teeth snapping inches from my throat, the stench of rot overwhelming. It was like being attacked by a rabid dog, all snarls and fury. I thrashed, letting go of the wheel to shove him off, my fists swinging wildly. "Get off me," I yelled, landing a punch on his chest that felt like hitting a slab of cold meat. The Civic swerved, tires screeching as we veered across lanes. Headlights flashed in my peripheral vision, a horn blaring as I nearly sideswiped a minivan. Eric, or whatever he was, didn't let up, his nails digging into my arm, drawing blood. I swung again, my elbow catching his jaw, but it didn't faze him. He hissed, a sound that wasn't human, and lunged for my neck again, his teeth grazing my skin. Panic took over. I don't know shit about Brazilian jiu-jitsu. My earlier bluff was pure desperation. But I fought like my life depended on it. Because it fucking did. I shoved him back with one hand, grabbing the wheel with the other, trying to keep us from crashing. The freeway was climbing higher now, the overpass railing looming on my left. I could see the exit sign ahead, a beacon of hope, but Eric was a nightmare I couldn't shake. "Stop it!" I screamed, my voice cracking as I slammed my foot on the gas, hoping speed would somehow fix this. Big mistake. The Civic shot forward too fast, the curve of the overpass coming up quicker than I expected. Eric grabbed my hair, yanking my head back, and I lost it. I swung blindly, my fist connecting with something, his face, his shoulder, I don't know. And for a split second, he loosened his grip. That's when it happened. The car hit the concrete barrier on the edge of the overpass, a bone-rattling crunch that sent us lurching sideways. The world tilted, my stomach dropping as the Civic pitched up and over the railing. We were airborne, the moon flashing through the windshield like a mocking spotlight. Time slowed the way it does in those moments when you know you're screwed. My phone, my water bottle, a half-eaten bag of flaming hot Cheetos, everything in the car went weightless, floating like we were in some fucked-up astronaut training. I saw Eric slam into the roof, then the door, his body flopping like a rag doll. The moon spun past the windows, fat and yellow, and I had this weird, fleeting thought about how much crap I had in my car. Old receipts, a pair of gym socks, a random USB drive I hadn't touched in years. It was like my brain was trying to distract me from the fact that we were about to die. Then the ground rushed up, a sea of asphalt bathed in that smoky orange streetlight glow. The impact was deafening, a crunch of metal and glass that swallowed the world. My head snapped forward, pain exploding across my skull, and everything went black. I woke to the sound of beeping, sharp, rhythmic, like a metronome from hell. My body felt like it had been run through a blender. Every muscle ached, my head throbbed, and something sharp was digging into my arm. I tried to move, but it was like my limbs were made of lead. My eyes fluttered open, the world a blurry mess of white light and antiseptic smell. Hospital. I was in a hospital. I thrashed, my body reacting before my brain could catch up. My arm caught something metal, an IV stand, and it crashed to the floor with a clatter. A nurse yelped, stumbling back as I accidentally kicked her in the shin. "Sorry," I croaked, my voice raw, like I'd been gargling sandpaper. My vision cleared and I saw her. A middle-aged woman in scrubs, clutching her leg and looking at me like I was a wild animal. "Mr. Carter." "Calm down," she said, her voice firm but shaky. "You're safe. You're in the hospital." Safe. The word felt like a lie. I tried to sit up, pain shooting through my arm and shoulder. My left arm was in a sling, my head wrapped in bandages that felt like they were squeezing my skull. I reached up, wincing, and felt the stitches on my scalp. 19, they'd later tell me. My body was a road map of cuts, tiny slices where they dug out glass shards from the wreck. My Civic, my lifeline, my ticket to paying rent, was totaled, a crumpled heap somewhere in a tow yard. What happened?" I asked, my voice hoarse. My memory was a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. The crash, Eric, those red eyes, they came back in flashes, each one hitting like a punch. The nurse adjusted my IV, her hands steady despite the chaos I'd just caused. "You were in a car accident," she said, her tone practiced, like she'd given this spiel 100 times. "You're lucky to be alive. Broken arm, broken clavicle, some stitches, and a lot of cuts, but you'll recover." I nodded, my head swimming. "There was a guy in my car. Eric, he was hurt. Where is he?" The nurse frowned, glancing at a chart on the wall. "There was no one else in the vehicle when the paramedics arrived. Just you." My stomach dropped. No, that's not right. He was in the back seat, bleeding, bitten, said his neighbor attacked him. You got to check, Mr. Carter. She cut me off, her voice gentle but firm. The police and paramedics only found you. No passenger, no blood in the back seat, nothing. You were alone. I stared at her, my mouth dry. That wasn't possible. I could still feel his breath on my cheek, still see those jagged teeth, those blood-red eyes. There was a T-shirt, I said, desperation creeping in. Bloody. He was holding it against his neck. You didn't find that? She shook her head, her expression softening into something that looked dangerously close to pity. No T-shirt. The police will want to talk to you, but right now, you need to rest. I sank back against the pillow, my head spinning. Alone? How? Eric had been there, real as the pain in my arm, real as the wreck that nearly killed me. My brain scrambled for answers. Maybe he'd crawled out, fled the scene, or what? Vanished into thin air like some supernatural reject. I didn't buy it, but the way the nurse was looking at me like I was one bad day away from a psych ward made me shut up. The hospital room was sterile, all white walls and beeping machines, but the air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't name. Outside I could hear footsteps, quick, purposeful, like people were rushing. A muffled scream echoed from down the hall, sharp and raw, followed by the low murmur of voices. I caught snippets. Another one? Bite marks, quarantine. My skin prickled. I tried to sit up again, but pain shot through my shoulder, pinning me to the bed. The nurse was at the door now, talking to someone in a hushed tone. I strained to listen, catching the words military and evacuation. Military? In LA? I glanced out the window, the blinds half open, and saw the city skyline under that same yellow moon. Then a low rumble, choppers, not police but military, their silhouettes cutting across the sky like vultures circling a corpse. My phone was on the bedside table, miraculously intact. I grabbed it, ignoring the pain in my arm, and opened X. The app was blowing up with posts from locals, people in Palms, Culver City, even downtown, a guy claiming he'd seen some dude climbing a building like Spider-Man, a woman saying her roommate came home acting possessed, with blood on his face. Another post, buried under a wave of skeptical replies, mentioned vampires and ghouls in West LA. The comments were ruthless, people calling it fake, a hoax, or just another LA weirdo spinning tales for attention. But I knew better. I'd seen it, felt it. The nurse came back, her face tight. Your mother's on her way from Texas, she said. She'll be here soon. Try to rest. Rest. Fat chance. The city was screaming, the hospital was buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest, and I was lying here with a busted arm and a head full of nightmares. Eric was gone, but he'd left something behind, a feeling deep in my gut that whatever had happened in my car was just the beginning. The sirens, the choppers, the screams down the hall, they weren't random. Something was coming, something big, and I was stuck right in the middle of it. The hospital room was a sterile cage, all white walls and blinking machines, but it felt like the epicenter of a storm nobody was talking about. My head throbbed under the tight bandages, each of the 19 stitches on my scalp pulling like tiny fish hooks. My left arm was slung up, my broken clavicle screaming every time I shifted, and the cuts from the glass shards, souvenirs from my Civic's last ride, stung like I'd been stung by a swarm of pissed-off bees. But the pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the feeling in my gut, that electric hum of dread, telling me the world outside these walls was unraveling faster than a TikTok trend. I lay back on the stiff hospital bed, my phone clutched in my good hand like a lifeline. The nurse, Karen, according to her name tag, had left me alone after her spiel about resting, and my mum being on her way from Texas. Rest? Yeah, right. The beeping of the heart monitor was like a metronome for my anxiety, each blip reminding me I was alive but maybe not for long. The muffled scream I'd heard earlier echoed in my head, along with those snatched words from the hallway. Bite marks, quarantine, military. My skin prickled, and not just from the IV digging into my arm. I opened X again, scrolling through posts with one thumb, ignoring the pain shooting through my shoulder. The app was a war zone of chaos and denial. A guy in Culver City swore he'd seen some dude with glowing eyes climbing a fence like a damn lizard. A woman in Venice posted about her neighbor growling and scratching at her door before cops dragged him away. Another post, buried under a pile of laughing emojis and get help comments, mentioned vampires in palms not far from where I'd picked up Eric. The skeptics were out in force, dunking on these stories like they were auditioning for a Reddit roast. You'll need to lay off the edibles, one user wrote. This ain't True Blood, said another, but I knew what I'd seen, Eric's shark teeth, those blood-red eyes, that thing on the streetlight. This wasn't edibles, this was real. I swiped back to the search bar, typing Palms Attack and LA Vampires with shaky fingers. Nothing official came up. No news articles, no LAPD press releases, no government alerts. Just more X posts, half of them memes mocking the zombie apocalypse rumors. The lack of real information was almost scarier than the stories themselves. LA's a city that thrives on noise, sirens, traffic, influencers shouting into ring lights. But this silence from the authorities felt like a cover-up, like they were hoping whatever was happening would just go away. A low rumble outside snapped me out of my doom scrolling. I craned my neck, wincing as the stitches pulled, and peered through the half-open blinds. The yellow moon hung heavy over the city, casting LA in a sickly glow. Then I saw them. 3 military helicopters, black and sleek, cutting across the sky like predators. Not police choppers, not news crews. These were military, their rotors thumping like war drums. My stomach twisted. Since when did the National Guard roll through West LA? I thought of the wildfires that had torn through Pacific Palisades a few months back, forcing evacuations and turning the sky orange. But this didn't feel like a fire, this felt like something else, something nobody was ready for. The door to my room swung open and I flinched, nearly dropping my phone. It was Karen, her face tighter than before, like she'd just gotten bad news. Behind her, 2 cops in tactical gear strode past in the hallway, their radios crackling with static. Another scream echoed from somewhere down the corridor, sharp and desperate, followed by a crash, like someone had knocked over a tray of medical tools. Karen didn't even blink, which was somehow worse. Your mother's plane lands in about an hour, she said, adjusting my IV with practiced efficiency. We've notified her. She'll be here soon. Thanks, I muttered, my voice rough. I wanted to ask about the scream, the cops, the helicopters, but her expression said she wasn't in the mood for questions. Instead, I went for the one thing I couldn't let go. The guy in my car, Eric. You're sure nobody found him? He was bleeding bad. Had a bite on his neck, said his neighbor attacked him. Karen's hands paused on the IV line just for a second before she resumed her work. The paramedics only found you, she said, her tone flat, like she was reading from a script. No passenger, no blood in the back seat. The police will want to talk to you about the accident, but they're busy right now. Busy with what? I pressed, sitting up despite the pain shooting through my shoulder. What's going on out there? I heard someone scream. And those helicopters. Rest, Mr. Carter. She cut me off, her voice sharp. You've been through a lot. You need to focus on recovery. She turned to leave, but not before I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or exhaustion, like she was holding it together by a thread. The door clicked shut, and I was alone again with the beeping machines and my racing thoughts. I looked back at my phone, the X posts staring back like a digital scream into the void. One caught my eye, a thread from a user in Westchester, just a few miles from Palms, claiming they'd found a pile of dead crows in their backyard, like something sucked them dry. The replies were brutal. Bro, it's just a hawk. Stop smoking that dispensary kush. But the image attached, a dozen birds, feathers ruffled, eyes glassy, hit too close to home. I thought of Eric's red eyes, his jagged teeth, the way he'd sniffed the air like a predator. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. My mind kept replaying the crash, Eric's attack, the car flipping, the moon spinning past the windshield. The nurse said I was alone, but I knew he'd been there. I could still feel his cold breath, still hear that rasping laugh. Had he crawled out of the wreck, run off into the night like his naked neighbour? Or, and this was the thought that made my skin crawl, had he never been there at all? Was I losing it, my brain scrambled by the crash, or that damn COVID fog I'd been fighting for months? A commotion in the hallway snapped me out of it. Raised voices, footsteps pounding, then another scream, this one closer, rawer, like someone was fighting for their life. I sat up, ignoring the pain, and swung my legs over the side of the bed. The IV tugged at my arm, but I didn't care. I had to know what was happening. I shuffled to the door, my hospital gown flapping like a sad cape, and peeked through the small window. The hallway was chaos. Nurses rushed past, pushing carts piled with medical supplies. Two more cops in tactical gear stood at the far end, their hands on their holsters, faces grim. A doctor was shouting into a phone something about isolation protocols and CDC. Then I saw it, a gurney being wheeled past, a patient strapped down, thrashing against the restraints. Their face was obscured, but I caught a glimpse of their arm, pale, almost grey, with a jagged wound that looked too much like Eric's bite. My heart pounded. I backed away from the door, my good hand fumbling for my phone. I needed answers, and I wasn't getting them from Karen or the cops. I opened the Uber app, scrolling to the ride history. There it was. Eric, 1:45 a.m., pickup in Palms, no destination logged. No profile pic, no rating, just a ghost in the system. I tapped on his name, hoping for something, anything, to prove I wasn't crazy. Nothing. The app glitched, the screen freezing before kicking me back to the main menu. Fuck, I muttered, tossing the phone onto the bed. I ran my hand through my hair, wincing as my fingers brushed the stitches. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in. Outside, another helicopter roared by, its shadow flickering through the blinds. The screams had stopped, but the silence was worse, heavy with the promise of something worse to come. I thought about my cousin up in Canada, probably knee-deep in fake snow and bad dialogue for Business Girl Goes Home for Christmas 6. He'd love this story. Too bad he'd turn it into some cheesy horror flick with a love triangle and a happy ending. But this wasn't a movie. This was my life, and it was spiraling into some World War Z shit. I grabbed my phone again, opening X one last time. A new post popped up, timestamped 10 minutes ago, from someone in Culver City. Anyone else hear about the ERs filling up? Friend said they saw a guy with no pulse attack. A nurse at UCLA Medical. WTF is happening? The replies were a mix of panic and snark. Sounds like meth. You'll believe anything. Check Snopes, dummy. But one comment buried deep stopped me cold. Same thing happened in Palms last night. Guy bit someone. Ran off. Cops wouldn't talk. My blood ran cold. Palms, last night. That was Eric. I started typing a reply, my fingers shaking, but before I could hit send, the door burst open. It was Karen, her face pale, a clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. "Mr. Carter, we need to move you," she said, her voice clipped. "Now." "What? Why?" I asked, my heart racing. "What's going on?" She didn't answer. just started unhooking my IV with quick, jerky movements. Behind her, the hallway was a blur of motion, more gurneys, more cops, and a new sound. A low, guttural moan that didn't sound human. My skin crawled, my mind flashing back to Eric's rasping laugh, his red eyes, that thing on the streetlight. "Karen, talk to me," I said, my voice rising. "What the hell is happening out there?" She met my eyes for the first time, and what I saw wasn't just fear, it was terror, raw and unfiltered. "We don't know," she whispered, "but it's spreading." Karen's words hung in the air like a bad jump scare. It's spreading. My heart was already pounding from the chaos in the hallway, but now it felt like it might punch through my rib cage. The hospital room, with its sterile white walls and relentless beeping monitors, suddenly felt like a trap. My broken arm throbbed in its sling, my stitches tugged at my scalp, and the cuts from the glass shards burned like a reminder of the nightmare I'd barely survived. But Karen's face, pale, eyes wide with something beyond exhaustion, told me the real nightmare was just getting started. "Spreading?" I repeated, my voice hoarse, cracking like a bad SoundCloud rapper. "What's spreading? What the hell are you talking about?" Karen didn't answer. She was too busy yanking the IV from my arm, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the tape. The needle came out with a sting and I winced, but she was already moving to the bedside table, grabbing my phone and a plastic bag with my wallet and keys. "We need to move you to another ward," she said, her voice clipped, like she was trying to outrun her own fear. "Now, Mr. Carter." "Move me where?" I demanded, swinging my legs off the bed despite the pain shooting through my clavicle. My hospital gown flapped like a budget superhero cape, and I felt about as heroic as a hungover intern on their first day. "Karen, talk to me. I heard screams, saw cops and those military choppers out there. What's going on?" She froze for a split second, her eyes flicking to the door like she expected something to burst through. The hallway was a circus of noise, footsteps pounding, radios crackling, and another guttural moan that made my skin crawl. It wasn't human, not entirely, and it sounded too much like Eric's rasping laugh in my car. "I don't have time to explain," she snapped, shoving the plastic bag into my good hand. "Get it up, we're going." I stumbled to my feet, my head spinning from pain and whatever meds they'd pumped into me. The room tilted, but I steadied myself against the bed. "No way," I said, planting my feet. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening. I had a guy in my car, Eric, bit by his neighbor, acting like a damn vampire. Now he's gone, and you're telling me it's spreading? What is this? The Walking Dead?" Karen's face hardened, but her eyes betrayed her. Raw, unfiltered terror. "You want answers? Fine. People are coming in with bites like your friend. They're changing. We don't know why, and we don't have time to figure it out. The hospital's overwhelmed and the police—" She cut off as another scream tore through the hallway, this one closer, followed by a crash, like glass shattering. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as an LA summer. "Changing how?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Eric's red eyes, his jagged teeth, that hungry giggle, they were burned into my brain like a bad TikTok loop. Karen didn't respond. She grabbed my arm gently, but with enough force to say, "Move," and pulled me toward the door. I shuffled after her, my bare feet cold on the linoleum, my gown barely covering my arse. The hallway was a war zone. Nurses pushed gurneys piled with supplies, their faces masks of panic. Cops in tactical gear stood at every corner, their radios spitting static and barked orders. "Lock down the East Wing, get the CDC on the line." A doctor sprinted past, shouting about containment protocols, while a patient on a gurney thrashed against restraints, their arm flopping out to reveal a bite mark that looked like a carbon copy of Eric's. My stomach twisted. "Holy shit," I muttered, my good hand clutching the plastic bag like it was a life raft. Karen dragged me down the hall, weaving through the chaos like she'd done this 100 times. The air was thick with antiseptic and something else, something metallic like blood, mixed with a faint rot that made my nose burn. I thought of Eric's breath, that freezer-cold stench, and my legs nearly buckled. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice drowned out by another moan, this one low, almost animalistic, coming from a room we passed. The door was cracked open, and I caught a glimpse of a patient strapped to a bed, their eyes wild, their mouths snapping like they were trying to bite the air. My heart stopped. It was Eric's face all over again, pale, twisted, not human. "Observation ward," Karen said, not slowing down. "It's safer for now." "Safer?" I snorted, my sarcasm kicking in despite the fear. "Lady, this place is one bad jump scare away from a zombie apocalypse. You call that safe?" She didn't answer, just pushed me through a set of double doors into a quieter corridor. The noise from the main ward faded, but the tension didn't. The new hallway was dimly lit, the fluorescent lights flickering like they were auditioning for a horror flick. A single cop stood guard at the far end, his hand on his holster, his face pale as he stared at nothing. Karen led me to a small room, empty except for a bed and a chair, and gestured for me to sit. "Stay here," she said, her voice tight. "Someone will check on you soon." "Karen, wait!" I started, but she was already gone, the door clicking shut behind her. I was alone again, the silence deafening, except for the faint hum of the hospital's HVAC and the distant thump of helicopters outside. I sank onto the bed, my head spinning. My phone buzzed in the plastic bag, and I fished it out, ignoring the pain in my arm. The screen was cracked but functional, thank God for small miracles. I opened X again, my fingers trembling as I scrolled. The posts were getting weirder. A user in Santa Monica claimed their dog came home with a bite mark and wouldn't stop growling at shadows. Someone in Koreatown posted a blurry video of a figure climbing a fire escape, moving too fast to be human. The comments were a mix of panic and snark. "Bro, that's just parkour. Lay off the shrooms." But the sheer volume of stories was impossible to ignore. Something was happening in LA, and it wasn't just a bad batch of dispensary weed. I typed a quick post, my thumbs clumsy. "Anyone in Palm see weird shit last night? Picked up a guy who got bit, went full vampire in my car. Crashed on the 10. Now he's gone. WTF is happening?" I hit send, not expecting much. Within seconds, replies flooded in. Most were dismissive. "Sounds like you need a nap, homie." But a few were different. One user, at Westlagost, DM'd me. "Same thing happened to my cousin in Culver City. Bit by a neighbor, started acting crazy. Cops won't say shit. You okay?" I stared at the message, my heart racing. I started to type a reply, but a new sound stopped me cold. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I froze, my phone slipping from my fingers onto the bed. The cop at the end of the corridor was gone, his post empty. The footsteps got closer, heavy, like boots on gravel. Then a shadow passed under the door, long and distorted, like it didn't belong to anything human. My breath caught, my eyes locked on the door handle, waiting for it to turn. Nothing. The footsteps faded, and the silence returned, heavier than before. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so bad I could barely unlock it. I needed to get out of here, but where was I supposed to go? My car was toast, my apartment was a 30-minute Uber ride away, if I could even get a driver at this point, and my mum wouldn't land for another hour. I thought about my cousin, probably sipping overpriced coffee on his cheesy movie set in Canada, blissfully unaware that LA was turning into a horror show. Another sound, a low, gurgling moan, like someone choking on their own blood. It came from the room next door, followed by a thud like something heavy hitting the floor. My heart leapt into my throat. I stood, ignoring the pain in my shoulder, and crept to the door, pressing my ear against it. The moan came again, louder, followed by a scraping sound like nails on a chalkboard. My mind flashed to Eric, to the patient I'd seen thrashing on the gurney, to the thing on the streetlight. Were they all connected? Was this some kind of outbreak? I backed away, my good hand fumbling for the chair. It wasn't much, but I wedged it under the door handle, praying it would hold. My phone buzzed again, another DM from at West Lagost. Get out of their hospital if you can, they're locking people in. Check the news. I opened a browser, my fingers clumsy, and searched for Los Angeles outbreak. Nothing, no articles, no alerts, just the same old stories about wildfires and traffic. But X was a different story, a new post from downtown. ER at Cedars-Sinai is a madhouse, people with bites acting feral. Military's here, this is real. My blood ran cold. I thought of the helicopters, the cops, the screams. I thought of Eric's red eyes, his promise to drink the life out of me. I thought of the patient next door, moaning like a monster. My hand went to my neck, half expecting to find a bite I hadn't noticed. Nothing, just sweat and the sting of my own fear. The door rattled, a sharp jolt that made me jump. "Mr. Carter?" a voice called, low and unfamiliar. Not Karen, not a nurse. I backed up, my heart pounding, my eyes scanning the room for anything I could use as a weapon. The IV stand was too flimsy, the chair was under the door, and my phone wasn't exactly a ninja star. I was screwed. The handle turned, slow and deliberate, and I braced myself, my good fist clenched, ready to swing at whatever came through. The door creaked open and I saw a figure in the shadows, tall, pale, with eyes that glinted in the dim light. My breath caught, my mind screaming one word: Eric. The door creaked open and the figure in the shadows stepped into the dim light of the hospital room. My heart was a jackhammer, my good fist clenched, ready to swing despite the pain shooting through my broken arm. The figure wasn't Eric, or at least it didn't look like him. It was a man, tall and gaunt, wearing a doctor's coat that hung off him like it belonged to someone bigger. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, but they didn't have that blood-red glow I'd seen in Eric's. Still, something about him screamed wrong, like he was a glitch in the matrix of this already fucked up night. "Mr. Carter?" he said, his voice low, almost too calm for the chaos outside. "I'm Dr. Patel. I need to check your vitals." I didn't move, my eyes locked on his hands. No clipboard, no stethoscope. Just empty, bony fingers that twitched like they were itching for something. "Where's Karen?" I asked, my voice shaky but defiant. "She said someone would check on me, but I'm not feeling super trusting right now." Dr. Patel's lips twitched into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Karen's busy. The hospital's stretched thin." He took a step closer and I caught a whiff of that same rotten stench I'd smelled in my car with Eric. Faint but unmistakable. My stomach churned. "Stay back," I said, raising my good hand like I was warding off a stray dog. "What's going on out there? I heard screams, saw people with bites. Karen said something's spreading. You going to tell me what it is? Or am I supposed to keep playing Resident Evil blind?" He paused, his head tilting slightly like he was sizing me up. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting his face in sharp shadows. "You've been through a trauma," he said, his tone too smooth, like a podcast host trying to sell me a mattress. "Confusion is normal. Let me check your chart and we'll get you settled." "Bullshit," I snapped, my sarcasm kicking in despite the fear. "I'm not confused. I had a guy in my car who went full vampire, tried to bite me, and then poof, gone. Now the hospital's a circus, and you're dodging my questions like a politician on X. So what's spreading? Zombies? Vampires? Some TikTok plague? Dr. Patel's smile faltered, and for a split second I saw something in his eyes. Fear? Maybe. Or something darker. He took another step, and I backed up, my arse bumping against the bed. The chair I'd wedged under the door handle was still there, but it felt flimsy as hell. Outside, the hallway was quieter now, but the silence was worse, like the calm before a jump scare. The distant thump of helicopters kept going, a reminder that LA was a powder keg waiting to blow. "I need you to stay calm," Dr. Patel said, his voice dropping an octave. "There's been an incident. We're handling it." He reached for me, his hand moving too fast, and I swung instinctively, my good fist catching his wrist. His skin was cold, clammy, like touching a dead fish. "Don't touch me!" I shouted, shoving him back. He stumbled, his eyes narrowing, and for a moment I swore they flashed red, just like Eric's. My heart stopped, but before I could process it, a crash came from the hallway. Glass shattering, followed by a scream that was more animal than human. Dr. Patel's head snapped toward the door, and I took my chance. I grabbed the IV stand, pain be damned, and swung it like a baseball bat, catching him in the shoulder. He staggered, letting out a hiss that sounded too much like Eric's. I didn't wait to see if he'd get up. I yanked the chair from the door and bolted, my hospital gown flapping, my bare feet slapping the cold linoleum. The hallway was a nightmare. Gurneys were overturned, medical supplies scattered like confetti. A nurse was slumped against the wall, her scrubs torn, blood trickling from a bite on her arm. Two cops were at the far end, shouting into their radios, their guns drawn. Another moan echoed, low and guttural, coming from a room nearby. I didn't stop to look. I ran, my broken arm screaming, my stitches pulling, toward the nearest exit sign. The stairwell was dark, the emergency lights flickering like they were about to give up. I took the steps 2 at a time, nearly tripping as pain shot through my clavicle. My phone was still in my hand, buzzing with notifications from X. I didn't have time to check, but the snippets I'd seen, bites, feral patients, military lockdowns, were enough to tell me this wasn't just a bad night. This was an apocalypse, and I was stuck in the opening credits. At the bottom of the stairs, I burst through a door into a loading dock, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. The city was alive with chaos, sirens, choppers, and now gunfire sharp and sporadic, echoing from somewhere downtown. I ducked behind a dumpster, my heart pounding, and checked my phone. A new DM from at West Lagost. "Hospitals are ground zero. Get out of LA if you can. They're not human anymore." My blood ran cold. I typed back, my fingers shaking. "What are they? Where do I go?" But before I could hit send, a shadow moved at the edge of the loading dock. A figure crouched, its eyes glinting in the dark. I froze, my breath catching. It wasn't Eric, but it wasn't human either. And it was coming for me. The figure at the edge of the loading dock moved, its silhouette sharp against the orange streetlights. Its eyes glinted like twin coins reflecting the moonlight, and my heart slammed against my ribs. I crouched behind the dumpster, the cold metal pressing against my back, my hospital gown doing jack shit to keep me warm. My broken arm throbbed, my stitches burned, but I didn't dare move. The thing, because no way was it human, tilted its head, sniffing the air like a dog on a scent. My scent. The city was screaming around me. Sirens wailed closer now, layered over the relentless thwap-thwap of military helicopters. Gunfire popped in the distance, sharp and erratic, like firecrackers at a block party gone wrong. Los Angeles was coming apart, and I was stuck in a hospital gown with no car, no plan, and a phone that was 1% away from dying. My mind raced back to Eric, his red eyes, his jagged teeth, his promise to drink the life out of me. Was this thing like him? Was it him? I clutched my phone, the cracked screen glowing faintly. The DM from at Westlagost was still open. They're not human anymore. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but what was I supposed to say? Cool, trapped with a monster. Send help? The figure took a step closer, its movements jerky, like a marionette with half its strings cut. I could make out more now, pale skin, tattered clothes, and a face that was all wrong, lips peeled back to show teeth that glinted like knives. My stomach dropped. This was no meth head or prankster, this was something else. I shifted, my bare foot scraping against the asphalt, and the thing's head snapped toward me. Its eyes locked on mine, and I swear I felt my soul try to yeet itself out of my body. I bolted, pain be damned, sprinting across the loading dock toward a chain-link fence at the edge of the hospital lot. My gown flapped, my broken arm screamed, but I didn't care. I could hear the thing behind me, its footsteps light but fast, like it was gliding over the ground. The fence was taller than I expected, topped with barbed wire that looked like it meant business. I grabbed it with my good hand, the metal biting into my palm, and started climbing, my bare feet slipping on the links. The thing was closer now, its breathing a wet rasp that made my skin crawl. I glanced back, and it was right there, 10 feet away, crouched like a predator, its red eyes glowing in the dark. "Fuck!" I yelled, hauling myself up, the barbed wire snagging my gown and tearing a gash in my thigh. I dropped to the other side, landing hard on the asphalt, pain exploding through my clavicle. The thing hit the fence, its fingers clawing at the links, but it didn't climb. Instead, it hissed, a sound that was half snake, half nightmare. And then it was gone, melting into the shadows like it had never been there. I lay there gasping, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My phone buzzed, and I grabbed it, the screen flickering. At Westlagost. Again. Head to the hills, downtown's a war zone, stay away from biters. The hills, like the Hollywood Hills, Griffith Park, that was miles away, and I was in no shape to play Survivor LA Edition. My Civic was a crumpled memory, and I didn't exactly have a Lyft promo code for fleeing a zombie apocalypse. But staying here wasn't an option. The hospital was a death trap, and the city was falling apart. I staggered to my feet, clutching my plastic bag with my wallet and keys, and limped toward the street. Palms was a ghost town. The orange streetlights cast long shadows, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke, maybe from a fire, maybe from something worse. A police cruiser screamed past, lights flashing but no siren, like they were too busy to care. I checked my phone again, the battery at 3%. X was a mess, posts about feral attacks in Venice, a riot in Koreatown, and military roadblocks on the 405. One user claimed the mayor was holed up in a bunker, but the replies were all source and fake news. Still, no official reports, no CNN, no LA Times, just silence from the powers that be. I ducked into an alley, my bare feet stinging on the gravel. My mom's flight was landing soon, but LAX was a nightmare on a good day, and this was about as far from a good day as you could get. I needed a plan, find a car, get to my apartment, grab my shit, and maybe head to the hills like at Westlagost said. But first, I needed to not die. A low growl came from the end of the alley, and I froze. Another figure, small, hunched, eyes glinting in the dark. I backed up, my good hand fumbling for anything to use as a weapon. My keys. I gripped them like brass knuckles, my heart racing. "Stay back," I said, my voice shaking. The figure stepped into the light, a woman, maybe 30, in a torn yoga outfit, her face pale, her mouth smeared with blood. She snarled and I ran, my broken arm bouncing painfully as I sprinted toward the street. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The city was screaming and I was running out of time. The streets of Palms were a fever dream, a maze of orange streetlights and shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. My bare feet slapped the asphalt, each step sending jolts of pain through my broken arm and stitched up scalp. The woman from the alley was still behind me, her growls echoing like a bad horror movie sound effect. I didn't know if she was like Eric, whatever the hell Eric had become, but I wasn't sticking around to find out. My hospital gown flapped like a flag of surrender, and my plastic bag with my wallet and keys bounced against my thigh as I ran. The city was a war zone. Sirens screamed from every direction, blending with the thwap-thwap of helicopters overhead. Gunfire cracked in the distance. Closer now, maybe downtown or Koreatown. A police chopper swept low, its spotlight slicing through the night, catching a group of figures sprinting across a parking lot. They moved wrong, too fast, too jerky, like puppets on speed. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a bad night. This was LA turning into a purge movie. And I was the idiot who forgot to buy a gun, and I ducked behind a parked Tesla, its sleek black frame a stark contrast to the chaos. My phone was dead now, the battery giving up the ghost after that last DM from at West Lagost. Head to the hills. Easier said than done when you're half naked, half broken, and running from a yoga pants zombie. I peeked over the car's hood, my heart pounding. The woman was gone, but the street wasn't empty. Shadows moved at the edges, figures lurking just out of sight. My skin prickled. I needed to move, but where? My apartment was a long shot, and LAX was a no-go with my mum's flight landing in the middle of this shitstorm. I crept along the row of parked cars, keeping low, my good hand clutching my keys like a lifeline. The air smelled of smoke and something worse, rotten, like the stench from Eric's breath. A scream cut through the night, followed by the screech of tires. A black SUV roared past, swerving wildly before crashing into a streetlight. The driver stumbled out, clutching his neck, blood streaming between his fingers. He didn't make it 2 steps before something tackled him. A figure, fast and feral, pinning him to the ground. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I ran, cutting through a side street toward a strip mall I recognized from my Uber routes. The mall was dark, most of the stores shuttered, but a 7-Eleven glowed like a beacon. I limped toward it, my breath ragged, my broken arm screaming. The glass doors were cracked, but the lights were on, and I could see movement inside. I pushed through, the bell jingling like a cruel joke. The clerk, a kid in his 20s with a lip ring and a faded Slayer tee, looked up from behind the counter. His eyes were wide, his hands gripping a baseball bat. "Dude, you okay?" he asked, his voice shaky but kind. "You look like you just escaped a saw trap." I laughed, a hoarse, desperate sound. "Yeah, something like that. You got a phone charger? Mine's dead and I need to figure out what the hell's happening." He nodded, tossing me a USB-C cable from behind the counter. "Plug in over there," he said, pointing to an outlet near the Slurpee machine. "But like you might want to hurry. Shit's getting weird out there." "No kidding," I muttered, plugging in my phone. The screen flickered to life and I opened X, scrolling through a flood of new posts. Downtown was a war zone with reports of feral people attacking crowds. A video from Hollywood showed a mob swarming a police barricade, their movements jerky, their eyes glinting red. The comments were a mess, half panic, half denial. "It's a stunt," one user wrote, "viral marketing for a movie," but I knew better. I'd seen those eyes up close. The clerk, his name tag said Jake, leaned over the counter, his bat still in hand. "You seen them? The biters?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Picked one up in my Uber last night. Guy named Eric. Went nuts, tried to bite me, then vanished. Crashed my car.
Now I'm here looking like a discount Deadpool. Jake's eyes widened. Fuck, man. My cousin works at Cedars Sinai. Said the ER's full of them. People with bites acting like animals. Cops are locking it down, but it's spreading fast. Spreading how? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shrugged, his face pale. Dunno, bites maybe, like zombie rules. One of 'em got my cousin last night. She's not herself anymore. My blood ran cold. I thought of Eric, of the patient in the hospital, of the woman in the alley. My hand went to my neck, checking for bites I might have missed. Nothing. But the fear was there, clawing at my chest. My phone buzzed. A text from my mum. Landed at LAX. Where are you? It's crazy here. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. Stay at the airport. Not safe. I'm coming. I looked at Jake. You got a car? He nodded. Out back, but I'm not leaving. This place is my uncle's. Got to hold it down. Respect, I said, unplugging my phone. Can I borrow it? I'll bring it back. Promise. He hesitated, then tossed me a set of keys. Blue Corolla behind the dumpster. Don't die, man. I nodded, limping toward the back door. The night was waiting, and it wasn't friendly. The blue Corolla smelled like old coffee and regret, but it was my ticket out of palms. I slid into the driver's seat, wincing as my broken arm brushed the wheel. The keys shook in my good hand as I started the engine, the rumble a small comfort in a city that was screaming itself to death. My phone, barely charged, sat on the passenger seat, glowing with my mum's last text. Stay at the airport. Not safe. I'm coming. LAX was a mess on a good day, and this was the opposite of a good day, but I wasn't leaving her there. The streets were a battlefield. I drove slowly, weaving through abandoned cars and debris, suitcases, bikes, a random skateboard that crunched under my tires. The orange streetlights cast everything in a hellish glow, and the air was thick with smoke and that rotten stench I couldn't shake. Sirens wailed, helicopters roared, and gunfire echoed, closer now like the city was fighting a war it couldn't win. I passed a looted gas station, its windows smashed, a body slumped against a pump. I didn't stop to check if it was alive. My phone buzzed. A new ex-post from @WestLaGhost. Military's pulling out of downtown, biters everywhere, head north, Griffith Park, last safe spot. I gripped the wheel, my heart racing. Griffith Park was miles away, through a city that was eating itself alive. But my mum was at LAX, and I wasn't abandoning her. I turned onto the 405, the freeway eerily empty, except for a burning car in the distance. My mind kept replaying the night, Eric's red eyes, the thing on the streetlight, the hospital's chaos. It wasn't just a virus or a riot. This was something else, something old and hungry, spreading through bites like a twisted urban legend. I thought of the ex-posts, vampires, ghouls, biters. The skeptics called it fake, but I'd felt Eric's breath, seen his teeth. This was real, and it was everywhere. A figure darted across the freeway, too fast to be human. I swerved, the Corolla fishtailing, my broken arm screaming. Another figure appeared, then another, their eyes glinting red in my headlights. I floored it, the engine whining as I pushed the old car to its limit. The airport was close now, the glow of its terminals visible through the smoke.
I pulled into the arrivals lot, the place a ghost town except for a few stranded travellers and a military checkpoint. Soldiers in tactical gear waved me down, their rifles ready. I rolled down the window, my heart pounding. "My mum's here," I said, my voice shaky. "I need to find her." The soldier, a young guy with a face like stone, shook his head. "Airport's on lockdown. No one in or out. Turn around." "She's my mum," I snapped, my desperation boiling over. "I'm not leaving without her." He raised his rifle, but before he could speak, a scream tore through the lot. A group of biters, 5, maybe 6, burst from the shadows, their movements jerky, their eyes glowing. The soldiers opened fire, the sound deafening, but the biters kept coming, too fast, too strong. I didn't think. I hit the gas, the Corolla lurching forward, ploughing through the checkpoint. I found my mum near Terminal 3, huddled behind a baggage cart, her face pale but fierce. "Wes!" she shouted, running to the car. I threw open the door and she climbed in, her eyes wide. "What's happening?" "No time," I said, peeling out. "We're heading to Griffith Park. It's safe there. Maybe." The drive was a blur of chaos, biters in the streets, fires burning, helicopters crashing. We made it to the park, a pocket of quiet in the madness. A group of survivors, maybe a dozen, had set up camp near the observatory, armed with whatever they could find. At West Lagost was there. A skinny guy in a hoodie, handing out water. "Told you to come," he said, his voice grim but kind. We sat by a fire, the city burning below us. My mum held my hand, her grip tight. "You're okay," she whispered. But I wasn't. None of us were. The biters were out there spreading, and the silence from the news, the government, the world, it was deafening. But as I looked at the survivors, their faces lit by the fire, I knew one thing: we weren't done fighting.